Mark Moore here. I'm the author of The Master Leader. I want to tell you a little of the backstory of the book. I was asked to speak at an event somewhere in Ohio as a group of pastors, and they wanted me to talk about leadership. So I just started collecting all of my files on leadership. By the time I was finished, I had 80 pages of notes. So I thought, let's just make it into a book. And College Press was kind enough to publish it. Honestly, it wasn't very good. So when College Press released it to Him Publications, I got a contact from the owner of Him, and they said, hey, I want to redo this book. And I said, no way, it's a piece of junk. I never should have released it. Let me edit it. So I started editing it, and I put all of the ideas on the whiteboard in my office. And Jeff came in, he's one of our executive pastors, and I said, hey, give me your perception of this. And he starts looking through all the ideas and the structure. And he says, yeah, you've got some good ideas here, but it's too complicated. See, he comes out of the business world, not out of the church world. And he said, my leaders will never read that. Too much theology, too many Bible verses, too little application. They need something right now that'll help them. So I restructured some things and brought him back in and said, what do you think now? And he goes, still TMI. So I said, okay, well, why don't you write part of it? Jeff had never written a book, but he really did a great job. And you'll see in the book sections from Jeff Osborne. He is a high-level, C-level leader in organizations. He's now an executive pastor, true, but his background is business world. So what we wound up with, and this is why it's so unique, we have a book that, from a business leader's perspective, will make pastors better at business. And from a pastor's point of view, will make leaders and CEOs better pastors. That's what's unique about Master Leader. It has biblical principles that are, honestly, Jesus is the foundation of all servant leadership. Case in point, there never would have been the term civil servant had it not been for Jesus. There never would have been the title of prime minister had it not been for Jesus. Jesus literally, and this was the study of my PhD, Jesus was literally the inventor and founder of servant leadership, which now organizations all across the Western world realize is the only efficient way for leadership. So, what we want to do, what Jim and I want to do with you, is help you as pastors have a resource that will pull in your best leaders, whether they're leaders in the public policy or social service or business. They have leadership skills that you don't and won't. But now you have a tool that can bring them into let's call it a Bible study. Let's call it a discipleship group. They will make you better at the business of the church, and you will make them better at ministry through their business. So, a couple of big ideas I want to lay out for you as you think about studying leadership. Number one, the first two chapters, by far, are the most important. We have a paradoxical group of titles for Jesus. And in fact, no one called Jesus this but Jesus, Son of Man. That's chapter 2. It's a sign of humility. You know enough Bible and theology. I don't need to go into all the details. But this was not an exalted title in the Old Testament. It was a title to put someone in their place. And Jesus adopted this title, obviously the exalted text out of Daniel 7:14. He adopted it as a way of showing that God is coming to serve. And the other title, this is chapter 1, is Son of God. Boy, there's very rare uses of that. It's stunning how few uses. In the Old Testament, 0 uses. Oh, sure, Israel is called God's son, but no individual is called God's son, save David, but that was a messianic prophecy looking forward to the true Son of God, the true King David. Now, why is this important? Because if you don't have your identity as God's son, you will never be able to adopt a title of humility. Until you know who you are, and this is true for business people as well as for Christian pastors, if you don't know who you are, if you don't have confidence in your identity with God, you will never be able to afford the humility to take on the title Son of Man. That is the core essence of leadership. Here's another big idea, and maybe throw two more at you that I thought were really helpful for me. When I was at Ozark Christian College teaching for a couple of decades, we were good at being good. We were not great at being great. In other words, when Jesus said, be innocent as doves and shrewd as serpents, we got the innocent part down. The shrewd part, not so much. And I had to learn some hard lessons when I got into church world about how do you avoid landmines? How do you think strategically? How do you act shrewdly? You can call it manipulation if you want. I just call it being smart. Now, we think, this is a illustration of my preaching, up until I came to Christ Church of the Valley, the first question I asked in a sermon was, is it true? That's not my first question anymore. My first question is it helpful? It can be true without being helpful. It can't be helpful without being true. And when people flock into our campuses, they're looking for something that is helpful and true. So that's just one example in leadership where we think that we should market the gospel because, well, it's true, it's good, it's right. All of that is true. But if you don't have a marketing strategy that makes sense, if you don't have a marketing strategy that touches on the hurts and hopes of the people walking in the door, it doesn't matter how true it is. So we need to have not just good content in our sermons, but a good marketing strategy. For example, what is the problem that you're solving for people? Not just the answer to a question that you might have about the Bible, because they're not asking those questions. They're asking, how do I improve my marriage? How do I succeed as a parent? How do I recover this relationship that's broken? So when we want to think about being good pastors, we better think about strategic leadership of finding a problem and then offering a solution to that problem. And that happens, this is another big takeaway for me, through not just the right strategy, but the right systems. You can have strategy all day long, and it can be the right strategy. But if you don't have systems to carry it out. So for example, if you want to get someone engaged in service, you can just say, go serve your community. That's great. Some will, most won't. But when you offer a system through the church, whether it's a missions project or whether it's a volunteer opportunity, when you tap people into a system, your challenge for your sermon says, do this. If it's do this on your own, not likely going to happen. Do this in a system, then it is replicable week after week, month after month. One more thing that I'll say, and this was actually two more things. One thing that was really huge for me is teamwork. We have a whole chapter on teamwork. I've always been an individualist, kind of a lone ranger, a maverick, and that's not been healthy for me. My best sermons are written in community, and we don't know how to do that in the church as well as they do in business. So that was one example of how business leaders can make you a better pastor and how you as a pastor can make business leaders better pastors. One last thing, and this is super, super important. What I learned coming to an organization like ours at Christ Church of the Valley, we're not the best at everything. In fact, we may not be the best at anything, but we do have the best culture. If I had a chance of hiring someone who's a cultural fit or the most talented person, and you know this by watching sports, it's not the teams with the greatest players that win championships, it's the teams with the greatest teamwork. So through this book, you're going to learn lessons like this over and over again that may not be native to a Bible college environment, but are native to a business environment. But what you have to offer, if you can lead well, is an environment where your leaders will win people to Christ through their businesses. And honestly, Christ Church of the Valley is a big organization. Like, we have over 50,000 people on a weekend in attendance. That's 1% of our population. 1% of our population. We will never reach the entire valley of Phoenix, Arizona, until we tap into the expertise and influence of the leaders that are leading well in their businesses. And that's what I pray you are able to leverage through this book. God bless.